So I've had a whole bunch of people asking me what my thoughts might be on the whole Tesla Semi and Roadster event that took place, what was it, last week? And I do have some thoughts on it. I know this is a little bit behind the curve, but, you know, Thanksgiving. All right, so let's start by talking about the Tesla Semi. Some of the specs on this bad boy, it goes 0 to 60 in 20 seconds. That's hauling 80,000 pounds fully loaded, which is pretty impressive. It can go 65 miles an hour up a 5% grade, which most cabs can't do. And there are two different versions, one that gets 300 miles and one that gets 500 miles on a charge. And the 300-mile one goes for 150,000, 500-mile one goes for 180,000. Now, in a lot of ways, I think the Tesla Semi actually makes more sense than any other vehicle in their lineup. Because a car that you drive to work every day is just a terrible investment. Cars famously lose half their value the second you drive them off the lot. So even though you might be saving a lot of money on an electric car further down the road because of maintenance costs, fuel costs, and that kind of thing, most people are not going to have the money to spend up front to get a really expensive electric car like a Tesla. I mean, even the Model 3 is on the upper end of what most people could spend for a car right now. Although I actually saw an interesting video recently where they compared the cost of a Model 3 over 5 years with that of a new Honda Civic, and it actually came out pretty close, just a few $1,000s more spent over 5 years, again because of maintenance and fuel and whatnot. Anyway, back to my original point. If somebody buys a semi-truck, they're doing it for a business. You know, you are hauling stuff. You are running a business around this vehicle. And so those maintenance costs and those fuel costs become incredibly significant. Plus, most people who buy big trucks like this are not just individual owners. It's huge companies that buy fleets of these things. Huge companies that can afford that kind of upfront investment. So if the Semi can actually perform and deliver on what they're promising that it can, it might be one of the smartest choices they've made in terms of a product to put out there with this kind of technology. Like, it might be the best implementation of electric technology available. And it's almost a total no-brainer for trucking companies, which is why so many of them have already purchased pre-orders of these, like Walmart did, DHL, JB Hunt, Meijer, and a Canadian company called Loblaws.
But we realized that the economics of trucking matter tremendously. The fully accounted for true cost of trucking, a diesel truck will be 20% more expensive than a Tesla Semi per mile. So.
And of course, in one of the best one more thing moments since Steve Jobs went to the great semiconductor in the sky, he also revealed the new Tesla Roadster. And this thing is a beast. Some of the specs on this: 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds, which everybody's going gaga about. 0 to 100 in 4.2 seconds. Has a top speed of over 250, whatever that means. It's actually got 3 electric motors on it. It gets 620 miles per charge, and it sells for $200,000. Now, this is what you might call a hypercar. And yeah, $200,000 is way above what most people could afford to pay for a car, but when you compare it in terms of what it can do with cars that can actually do those things, most of those cars like Bugattis, they go for like $1 million. So this is actually a steal compared to those other cars. Now, a lot of people are talking about that 1.9 second 0 to 60 thing. I'm kind of getting tired of people talking about that and saying how cool Teslas are because of their 0 to 60 time, because it's a total vanity metric. It has no real use in the real world. How many times in the real world do you need to get to 60 miles an hour in less than 2 seconds? It's ridiculous. But what does matter in the real world is 600 miles per charge. That's 1,000 kilometers per charge. It's the first car that could actually do that. That is an actual game changer. It's a game changer because the second you have an electric car that can go as far or further than a gas car per charge, the reason for the whole range anxiety thing goes away. It's just gone completely. The number of excuses for people to not get electric cars goes way down. Obviously, it has to be less than $200,000 per car, but if it were to be down to a reasonable price, then yeah. Now, a lot of people have questioned whether or not it's actually possible to get a 200 kilowatt hour battery in a car that size, which that is the size of the battery that they're talking about here. So it's one of two things there. One is that they are lying about it, and the other is that they've actually come up with some kind of breakthrough battery technology to do this. Now, obviously, the exciting part about that second option is that that technology could filter down into the, more regular cars and could really change the game there too. Now, Now, following this event, Tesla's stock price went way up. The excitement in the company got reinvigorated, which, and here comes cynical Joe, was kind of the whole point. You know, Tesla's been mired in negative stories about their Model 3 launch, which has been delayed over and over again. They've run into so many problems and bottlenecks, production hell, as Elon calls it. Plus, they've had these negative stories about, you know, things going on at the factories, people being overworked, really bad work conditions, even racist stuff going on there. So they really needed something to get the excitement back up, and this did the trick. Now, I'm not saying that to put a veneer of suspicion over the whole thing, like everything they said was bullshit, but this is definitely Elon in his prime showman mode here, which, to his credit, is why he's a great businessman. But none of this hides the fact that they are currently dropping the ball on the Model 3, and this is a problem. Some of you may know I am a Model 3 reservation holder. My current car is 12 years old and getting really eccentric these days. By eccentric, I mean I'm constantly taking it into the shop for something. And yeah, I'm frustrated because I want to get the most future-proof car I can, and the Tesla Model 3 is definitely the most future-proof car out there. It's like, you know, it's even designed for autonomous driving and fleet driving that, you know, could be coming in the next 10 or 15 years. And my current car is hanging on by a thread, and it's super frustrating because I don't know how much further I can hold on. And yeah, there's also the fact that I now have skin in this game, and I don't want to look stupid if they screw the whole thing up. So I'm biased, is what I'm saying. Now, yeah, I expected when I put in my reservation it would be a long time before I got this car. You have to expect those kinds of things with Tesla. And yes, I've never built a car in my life. I don't know what goes into doing these things, especially at the mass production level that they're trying to achieve here. So I'm talking out of my ass just a little bit. But they've had 18 months to get this thing together, and they're still dealing with these bottlenecks. I mean, how have they not gotten their shit together on this? And the worst thing is that the bottleneck is in their battery production, of all places. You would think they would really have that part of it together, but they actually went with a different size battery. I believe it's a 2170 size lithium-ion battery for the Model 3, as opposed to the other kind that they were already producing in mass for the Model S and the Model X. Now, I'm sure there are reasons that they went with this. Maybe it gets better performance. Maybe it's an advancement over the ones that they were using for the S and the X. Maybe the S and the X will eventually start using this one, or maybe even a different one in the future. But it just seems like when you have 500,000 people sitting around waiting for a new car, maybe that's not the right time to start innovating with your core technology? I don't know. I also keep hearing about how the Fremont factory is apparently bursting at the seams, and that might be part of the reason why things are getting slowed down, which makes me start wondering, why can't they get another factory? Again, they had all these pre-orders, they had all this, you know, influx of money come in. Couldn't they have bought a new factory? Couldn't they have built a new factory? Could they have worked out a deal with an existing manufacturer to use part of their factory? Because they need to get this thing out, and the future of the entire company hangs on the Model 3. That has not changed. And apparently at the rate that they're spending money, they're going to be bankrupt in less than a year. So yeah, from my perspective, where I'm sitting here with my frustration in my car, that the headlight's out on it, you know, feels like instead of fixing the nuts and bolts problems to get the Model 3 out the door, they're focusing on the razzle-dazzle of the Tesla Semi and the Roadster in order to gin up more investor money, which is the very thing that all the Tesla haters keep saying that they are all about. And that's why some people call it a scam, because they think that they're not actually producing anything of value. They're just, you know, getting all this investor money. And I've always defended that, but it's kind of getting harder to do that now. Now, maybe this is just your typical Tesla time, and once they get this little bottleneck sorted out, everything's going to go back into the flow like it's supposed to. I certainly hope so. There are some rays of light. Apparently they have opened up the online configurator to non-Tesla employees. They're rolling it out across the country from California onward, so it's still going to be a while before I get a chance to do it. But still, that's progress, I guess. Also, apparently the head of Panasonic's battery division, who is a part owner of the Gigafactory, said that they have worked out the bottlenecks for the most part, and that everything's going to start going and ramping up and accelerating into where we need them to be in the near future. He would obviously know better than most people, so again, a ray of hope. And maybe they plan to reveal the Roadster this entire time in November, and the timing was just coincidental. Maybe in the long run I'll be eating my words. I hope I do. Those seem like some really tasty words. And to be fair, you know, these same kinds of bottlenecks, these same kinds of delays and issues plagued the launches of their other cars, which went on to completely change the auto industry. You know, we've been trying to get EVs on the road all this time, and now it's finally starting to happen, and it's only really happened because Tesla made it cool. But right now it is frustrating, and there's a lot of negative press out there about Tesla, and it does feel a little bit like that Roadster reveal was a bit of a smokescreen, even though it doesn't produce smoke because it's electric. But yes, still, I am a fan of Elon Musk, but, sometimes you got to keep it real. I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong. And I hope that a year from now, maybe 5 years from now, we all look back at this delay and just be like, oh, well, it was worth it because it produced this car and everybody loves it and it's all great. I hope that's what's going to happen. But I have my fears. I'm just putting it out there.